Hi, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Again with MMA fighter Colby Thicknesse, the teammate of UFC featherweight champ Alex Volkanovski from Freestyle Fighting Gym in Windang, New South Australia. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good, bro. What do you think about this big fight coming up between Paddy Pimblett and Rodrigo Vargas on March 20 on UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Aspinall?
I think it's a very good matchup for Paddy, and I think they're doing the right thing by giving him this sort of fight, because there was obviously the early talk about giving him Cerrone, and I thought that may have been just a tad bit too soon, because as sort of on the way down as Cerrone is, he's still a legit black belt, and I still think he probably has a better ground game than Paddy. And Paddy's striking in his first UFC fight did leave something to be desired, so I don't think that would have been the best matchup to put sort of straight into him. Given him Rodrigo Vargas, however, he's 1 and 2 in the UFC. I watched some of his fights. He's a pretty static sort of striker. He likes his chokes. He's pretty explosive. He goes for it. He hasn't really beat anyone of note. So I think they're doing Paddy a pretty big favor giving him this matchup.
Yeah, man. They told Charles Sonnen was talking the other day about that Paddy'd been offered 2 fights in particular. One was Cowboy. I can't remember the other guy's name, but both of them had been turned down. And at first he was upset about it, but then Paddy actually came out and said, no, the fight's too hard for me. I want to, ease my way up. I'm not really happy with the contract at the moment, and it's not worth it to be fighting these big guys. So let's get something a little bit easier. And, it's a smart thing to do, really. And it's been discussed heaps lately that boxers and that do it a lot easier. They get in, they slowly test the waters, they fight people within their comfort zone just to get their record up, to build them up, and then they work their way up to the top fighters. In UFC, they usually get thrown to the lions pretty quickly, especially with a young, popular lad like Paddy. So maybe it's a smart thing to do, eh?
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with pay, because I can't imagine that his pay structure would be too great at this point early in his career. However, I do think knocking off someone like Cerrone could lead to like another avenue of pay, because like obviously he would only be 2-0 in UFC at that point, but we saw how big and popular he got after his first fight. So imagine if he did sort of have a name like Cerrone on his resume. I think it could have been smart, but then again, I don't think it was a favorable matchup. So I think they did the right call given this fight. And I think stylistically for Paddy, this is going to be one of the fights where the guys, what has he lost? He's got, I saw that knee one, decision. So he's a pretty tough customer. He's got 1 submission defeat on his record. So it could be a good fight to see how Paddy sort of goes over the full 15 minutes. And it's going to sort of more showcase everything Paddy can do. This guy's, he's a southpaw. So that's something sort of unique for Paddy. But other than that, I honestly don't think this guy is going to offer him too many sort of challenges.
Yeah, man. The 2 main reasons that Paddy's going to win: one, he's a scouser, and scousers don't get knocked out. That's what he said. And also that Chris Williams boxing. Chris is a padgician on the pads. Even had him sparring 2 boxers at once. There's probably had a couple of pro guys, Brandon Dale and Liam Moon. I think he was sparring 2 of them at once. Impressive footage, bro. Pretty funny,
also, actually. He cuts about 45 pounds to make weight. So surely that has something to do with like his strength as well.
True, man. It's crazy. The way he puts on in between is just totally unprofessional and kind of not something he's going to be able to maintain forever. Eh? Like it's just not the way to go as far as professionals go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me wrong. Like even me, I sit sort of relatively lean now for my division, sort of staying in shape and that. But after a fight, especially of like Chris or something, I have the same problem as I'll put on like say 2 or 3 kilos, but honestly, man, like 80% of it just goes to my cheeks. So I look like I'm about 5-6 kilos heavier in photos because my cheeks are out here. However, when you look at Paddy, his cheeks are out here, but then the rest of his body's out there as well. So it's a bit different in that case.
So in that, in those little portable saunas that people sit with their head out, you like switch around, like you just put your head in there just to get your cheeks down.
Just trying to get a flush of water weight down from my cheeks. Exactly.
That's it, man. Hey, like you said, looking at Paddy, like his striking, obviously, like he's slightly unorthodox, and I think that's what helps him a little bit. Like I think someone mentioned in his last fight, like the guys there, that he has his hands down, but that helps him because he comes up with weird angles. Like the general sort of fighter that's got a decent skill set has hands a little bit higher, so the angle is slightly different. He does look a little bit awkward, yeah. He likes to keep distance with the jab, attacks with that lead leg. He's kind of flexible for it. Like he throws up some nice high kicks, and he could catch anyone with that, I reckon. he explodes into kind of flurries. But again, like you mentioned, he kind of looks a little bit elementary. He's got that big chin up and not really so technical, you know, pretty focused and pretty aggressive, but not really that technical yet in the stand-up.
He does have a good sort of hip dexterity and a good kicks. He has like nice stabby tips, the nice big kicks over top. But the biggest thing is as soon as he starts to throw or he starts to let his combinations really let his hand goes, his hands don't come back to his chin, or there's big openings sort of in between. He's not throwing the jab, bringing it back, throwing his cross. He starts to swing a little bit wild, and at the certain level, especially against an opponent like this, I think he's going to be able to get away with it, because I don't think you sort of, if you hit him with the first one and it sort of starts to hurt him a bit, I don't think guys at this level are sort of fully prepared to counter and throw back even when they're hurt. But I think when he starts getting to that top sort of enchilada, that's when it's really going to start to hit. We're going to probably see him getting counted a lot more, or even, I mean, counted in combinations, or even just counted off one off. So if he starts flicking out lazy jabs, leaving his chin up there, guys are going to come in with dipping jabs, crosses straight over the top. However, for this fight, I don't think it's going to be too big of a factor.
Yeah, this guy Vargas, he's good. I mean, like we mentioned before, every single person in there is good.
Mm-hmm.
He looked okay against Brock Weaver, kind of a similar sort of skill set in a way. You look at his striking, it's not too dissimilar to Paddy's, you know, but Vargas is a little bit different. He's a bit more relaxed. His striking overall is okay, but he doesn't have this massive high output rate. He doesn't look like he hits that hard, although he did drop a couple of people in their fights, like drop to their knees and that. He gets fatigued a little bit as well, which is another thing to Paddy's advantage. When he fought Brock Weaver, did you see that fight? It was
No, I saw the Alex de Silva, and I watched the Marco, the one in Combat 10 this morning as well.
Yeah, when he fought Brock Weaver, he was throwing some calf kicks. You know, he kind of dominated in a takedown, but on the ground, he didn't look like he had much to offer. He was kind of in a control position, and he almost kind of got guillotined a couple of times, and then he stood up and kneed Weaver to death before he actually got to stand up, so he got DQ'd. But anyway, but he's got like a basic overall skill set, right? Like if you were to choose out of a lot of the fighters within the UFC in that division, you'd probably say, you know, if you were Paddy, you might say, yeah, this one looks a little bit easier than someone like Cowboy. Yeah, so let's have a go.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this guy's a scrub. Like, to get into the UFC, you're the top 1% of 1%ers to be there. But then again, just because you're in that top doesn't mean there's guys that aren't better than you. There's obviously you're exceptional to get there, but then just because you're exceptional doesn't mean there's guys levels above you and sort of thing. So it's nothing taken away from him. I just think it's a smart stylistic matchup for Paddy. And if I think Paddy's do I think I know this guy's pretty tough, so I don't know if Paddy's gonna be able to. He's pressuring, it's gonna be good, but I don't know if he's gonna be able to get the finish. The biggest thing is I wonder how the crowd's gonna come into play. I wonder if Paddy he might blow his load a bit earlier, get too overexcited with a crowd fighting in front of London and everything. I'm not saying that he might gas out and lose the fight because of it, but we might see a much slower output during the second and third round compared to what we would normally see for him, because he might go out there in the first really hard for the finish. Old mate's tough. He probably can survive the first round sort of onslaught, and then we might see a sort of slower in second round.
Man, this
second and third, I should say.
This fight's in the UK. It's in near London, right? So it's just going to go off. It's like they said in some of his earlier fights, when you watch Paddy, the crowd just goes mental, and all those same crowd that he had before are probably going to be like quadrupled by now, because, you know, he's been in the UFC, so even more people know about him. It's just going to go off. Inside there is going to be crazy, and that might even overwhelm Vargas. It might not even overwhelm Paddy. He seems to like thrive in that situation of being, you know, up there, people yelling at him and everything. I reckon he might just go the hell off, stick his chin up, start like swinging crazy punches and land one. You know, I've got a feeling he's going to do well, but I don't know if it'll go his way. Paddy reckons first round sub or ground and pound. So he's obviously thinking of that ground fighting route. And when you look at Vargas, it probably is the way to go. But then he looks like he's got a strong enough punch to hurt him as well. So let's see which way he goes. But I'm actually tipping Paddy takes him out a little quicker than maybe in the first, like he says. But I'm not sure whether it'll be on the ground or standing. I'm going to say Paddy first round, though, just because he's nicely hand selected. This guy, he's pumped, and that Chris Williams boxing is going to see him through.
Yeah, that's a smart. It's honestly, it's hard to argue with that. I'm purely banking. I know Paddy's pretty experienced at this point. This would be his 20th professional fight. So obviously he's been in front of that loud crowds and everything, but we have seen guys who sort of fight in front of their hometown, and it can get a little bit to them. So I wouldn't be surprised if this happened. I'm still picking Paddy, but I'm just going to go by a decision.
Perfect. All right, bro. Thanks for that.
No worries.